In June 1812, Napoleon led the largest army in European history into Russia. 6 months later, 92% of those soldiers were dead. What happened in those 6 months was not just a military disaster, it was a masterclass in how the most powerful man in the world destroyed himself through a single decision. As you consider the sheer scale of this catastrophe, ask yourself, what drives a leader to gamble with the lives of over 685,000 soldiers, the largest army ever assembled in European history, as Napoleon did on June 24, 1812, when he crossed the Neman River into Russia? Before this ill-fated invasion, Napoleon had been expanding his empire, conquering much of Europe and imposing the continental system, which banned British goods from the continent, as stated in the Berlin Decree of November 21, 1806. By 1810, he had annexed the Papal States, and his brother, Joseph Bonaparte, was on the throne of Spain, following the abdication of King Charles IV on March 19, 1808. The Russian Tsar, Alexander I, had initially allied with Napoleon, but by 1812, he was growing increasingly wary of French intentions, particularly after Napoleon's annexation of Oldenburg, a German state, on December 13, 1810. As you examine the complex web of alliances and rivalries, consider, how did Napoleon's aggressive expansionism contribute to the eventual Russian invasion, which began on June 24, 1812, with the crossing of the Neman River? The invasion itself was a disaster from the start, as Napoleon's army advanced too far into Russia, stretching their supply lines to the breaking point, with the distance from Moscow to Paris being over 1,500 miles, as noted by the French historian, Albert Vandal, in his book Napoleon et Alexandre. The Russian scorched earth strategy, employed by General Mikhail Kutuzov, denied the French army food and shelter, forcing them to march on empty stomachs, with the Russians burning over 1,000 villages and towns, including the city of Smolensk, which was set ablaze on August 17, 1812. The early winter, which set in on October 24, 1812, with temperatures dropping to -20 degrees Celsius, further exacerbated the French army's suffering, as they lacked warm clothing and supplies, with over 200,000 soldiers dying from hypothermia and starvation. The Battle of Borodino, fought on September 7, 1812, was a bloodbath, with over 70,000 casualties on both sides, and although the French emerged victorious, they failed to gain a decisive advantage, leaving them weakened and vulnerable to the impending Russian winter. As you reflect on the series of catastrophic decisions that led to this point, ask yourself, what role did Napoleon's own hubris play in the disaster that unfolded, particularly in his decision to split his army into 3 separate corps, as noted by the historian, David Chandler, in his book, The Campaigns of Napoleon. The aftermath of the Russian invasion was devastating for Napoleon, with his army reduced to just 93,000 soldiers by December 1812, a loss of over 592,000 men, as reported by the French historian, Adolphe Thiers, in his book, History of the Consulate and the Empire. The Sixth Coalition, formed on September 24, 1813, with the signing of the Treaty of Teplitz, eventually defeated Napoleon at the Battle of Leipzig on October 16, 1813, marking a decisive turning point in the war, with over 54,000 French soldiers killed or wounded. As you consider the long-term consequences of this disaster, ask yourself, how did the failure in Russia contribute to the eventual downfall of Napoleon's empire, which was formally dissolved on April 11, 1814, with the Treaty of Fontainebleau? As you ponder the lessons of history, remember that the Russian invasion was a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked ambition, with Napoleon's own words, "An army marches on its stomach," serving as a stark reminder of the importance of logistics and strategic planning, as noted by the historian, Clausewitz, in his book, On War. What can you learn from the catastrophic decisions that led to one of the greatest military disasters in history, and how can you apply those lessons to your own life, as you reflect on the fact that Napoleon's invasion of Russia remains one of the most significant military blunders in history, with over 600,000 casualties, as documented by the historian, Dominic Levin, in his book, Russia Against Napoleon.